Hello everyone and welcome back. In this lesson, we will be reviewing or learning how to create a line feature class with multiple line features in it. The question is this, that we are going to create a script to create lines between this point, we call it station, and destination, we're creating lines from this point, destination, to every single station that we have in stations layer. We have 10 stations. We have this single point destination. Accordingly, we will be having 10 lines connecting destination to each single station. Let's see how we would write this script. So I created this cell. I added all these comments explaining each block of code. So first thing, as always, I would import my modules. Then I would define two feature layers, my destination and stations. I point to them, I save them, I store them in point layer 1 for my destination and point layer 2 for stations. And of course, in the next block of code, in these two lines, I would read or describe my destination point to extract or to get its spatial reference. Why? Because you know that from previous lessons that when I have to create a line object, then I would need to have a spatial reference. And in the third part, I will create a blank ArcPy array. You already know that we use ArcPy arrays to collect or to store points in it. And then later on, we use this ArcPy array to create a line object. So ArcPy arrays, remember that we use them to collect or to store points in it. And then of course, I have an empty Python list. I call it feature lists. So the idea here is this, that I will be creating an ArcPy array of 2 points. Why? Because each line can be created using 2 points, this point and one of these ones, right? So to create a line, I need an array of 2 points. So that is the logic of this example. So we need to create an array of 2 points only. These 2 points later on can be used to create a line object. So the question is this: how I add the points to this empty ArcPy array. I need 2 points. Then I'm going to use I'm going to add 2 points to this array. Then I'm going to use this array of 2 points to create a line. For the very first point, which would be my destination, I use the structure that you saw before. Basically, I'm creating a search cursor of my destination, and I'm reading x and y coordinate of it. Then I have to use a for loop to read each row. In this case, I only have one row, but doesn't matter. I still use a for loop to read the item number 1 x coordinate and item number 2 y coordinate of my destination. Then I would create a point object of those coordinates. I create an ArcPy point object, and then I simply add it to my ArcPy array. Using this block of code, I simply can add the first point to the array. This first point, of course, would be the first point for all lines, because all lines would be starting at destinations. The second point would be changing. So first it would be the second point, then this one, and so on, right? So let's take a look at this part. So what I did is this. The first part is I simply create a cursor of this row, because I only have one point in destination, a cursor of x and y coordinate. Then I go create a for loop to read this row. Still, I have one row. However, I still use for loop method to read these values. So I grab this row. I read the first item, item 0, and the second item, item 1. And what I do here are in these steps. I read these values, x and y coordinate. Then I would go and create a point object, ArcPy point object based on x and y value. Then I add that point object to my ArcPy array. It is an empty, but I add that point, and I would end up with an ArcPy array with one point in it, right? So that's my logic for now. So that's what we did in this case, in this block of code. Then the next block of code is super important for us to understand. What we do here, the first thing I do, I create a cursor of all the rows, all points in stations, and I read x and y coordinates of them, right? Then I go ahead and read all the rows one by one. So what I do, let's jump here. I first read the first row, right? X and y coordinate. I read x and y coordinate of the first point. Then I create a point object, ArcPy point object, and I add that point to my array. If you remember, this array had one point in it. So when I add the second point, I would end up with an ArcPy array with 2 points. That's wonderful, because using these 2 points, I can create my ArcPy line object now. So I would go and create my ArcPy line object using these 2 points that are in this array, right? And of course, for line objects, I need a spatial reference. I read the spatial reference object, and I can use it here. So in this line of code, I simply can create a ArcPy line object using these 2 points with a specific spatial reference, right? I create that line. Here it is, a line object. And then when I created that line object, I can add it to that Python list now. This Python list will be a collection of all lines. When I'm done with this, then I would simply go and remove the second item. I pass index 1, which points to this second item in this array, right? So this is item 1 with index 0. This is item 2 with index 1. I remove the second point. Why? Because I need my first point. It reaches destination to create another line. So I would end up with, again, an ArcPy array of 1 point in it, which would be destination. This is the end of my for loop. Then my for loop goes and reads the second row. Here is the second row. I read X and Y coordinate. I create a point object. I add that point object to my ArcPy array with 1 item in it. So I end up with, again, an array of 2 points. However, this time, this second point would be this station, the second station. And then I create a line object and I add it to my feature list or Python list. And then when I'm done, I simply go ahead and remove this second point in my array. Why? Because I still have the third point to read. I read the third point. I create a point object. I add it to my ArcPy array. I would end up with an array of 2 points. I simply can make a line of it. I add that line to that feature list. I remove then the second point, and so on. And I do that for every single point in the station layer till I'm done with it, right? This way, I simply, what I did here, I read each point, added it to my array, create a line, then remove the point from that array, read the next point, right? Then when I'm done, I simply would end up with a Python list, I call it feature list, of 10 lines. And I simply use copy feature management and I save it as connection lines here. Let's run this one, see how this one works. I'm going to go Shift Enter. It reads all those points, creates, there you go, creates the lines, and then it is done. Now I have this connection lines with 10 lines in it. If I go open attribute table, you would see that I have 10 lines in it. And I saved it in my database in lines as my connection lines. So that's all. That's the logic here, right? So again, you should go and practice, type these things one more time. And this time I would give you guys another assignment on creating lines. Okay, bye everyone.